The champagne flute shattered against the marble floor of the penthouse living room. Silence followed as 30 pairs of eyes turned toward me. "Did you just call me pathetic?" I asked, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. My husband Marcus stood frozen by the bar, his face pale beneath his perfect tan. Behind him, Vanessa, his executive assistant, reached for his arm, then thought better of it. "Olivia, you're making a scene," Marcus hissed, glancing nervously at the crowd of investors and colleagues gathered for what was supposed to be his celebratory promotion party. I smiled. Not the practiced, perfect smile I'd worn for 8 years as his flawless corporate wife, but something wilder, more dangerous. "Oh, I haven't even started yet." I pulled a small remote from my clutch bag and pointed it at the massive screen that dominated one wall of our penthouse. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for interrupting the festivities, but I believe you should all see this before investing another dollar with my husband." Marcus lunged forward. "Olivia, don't—" But I had already pressed the button. The screen flickered to life, showing a series of documents, bank statements, and photographs. The room fell completely silent as understanding dawned on their faces. "This is what happens," I announced, my voice clear and calm, "when you mistake someone's silence for weakness. When you believe that because a woman smiles and plays her part, she must be blind, stupid, or both." I turned to face Marcus directly. "The perfect wife act ends tonight. And my revenge? Well, that's going to be absolutely priceless." 8 years earlier, when I first met Marcus Reed, I was 25, working as an analyst at Paragon Financial, and still recovering from my father's sudden death. Marcus was 34, charismatic, and already a rising star at the firm, a vice president with his eyes set firmly on the C-suite. He noticed me during a presentation I gave on emerging market opportunities. I'd spent weeks researching and preparing that presentation, and when I finished, he was the first to applaud. "You've got a brilliant mind, Olivia Chen," he told me later that evening when he'd invited me for a drink. "But you're too quiet about it. The world won't recognize your brilliance if you don't learn to showcase it." I was flattered, of course. My father had always praised my intelligence, but cautioned me about drawing too much attention. "The smartest people in the room rarely announce themselves," he used to say. But Marcus saw things differently. He believed in making an impression, in being remembered. Our courtship was a whirlwind. Within 6 months, he proposed with a diamond ring that made my colleagues gasp. The wedding followed quickly, a lavish affair covered by several financial magazines as the union of a Wall Street power couple. I didn't realize then that Marcus hadn't proposed to a partner. He'd acquired an asset. "We're going to do incredible things together," he promised the night before our wedding. "I'll handle the spotlight, and you'll be my secret weapon, the brilliant mind behind the throne." I loved him. I believed him. And for a while, it seemed to work. After the wedding, Marcus suggested I leave Paragon. "We're going to start our own fund," he explained. "Horizon Capital. You and me. Your research skills and my connections will be unstoppable." It made sense. We spent months developing our strategy, with me creating complex analytical models that Marcus would then present to potential investors. His showmanship and my substance proved an effective combination. Within 2 years, Horizon Capital was managing over $200 million, and Marcus Reed was being profiled as a financial wunderkind. The articles rarely mentioned me. When they did, I was Marcus Reed's supportive wife, who gave up her own career to help her husband succeed. At first, it didn't bother me. I was doing the work I loved, and we were building something together. Or so I thought. The first sign that something was wrong came 3 years into our marriage. I discovered an inconsistency in our fund's accounting, a small but significant discrepancy in how returns were being reported to certain investors. "It's just a temporary cash flow issue," Marcus assured me. "We have to keep investor confidence high while we weather this market correction. It's standard practice." It didn't feel standard to me, but I trusted him. Marcus had been in the industry longer, and his confidence never wavered. So I buried my concerns and focused on our upcoming investor conference in Tokyo. That was when Vanessa Blackwood entered our lives. Marcus hired her as his executive assistant without consulting me. "She comes highly recommended," he said. "Worked for Goldman for years. She'll help us scale." Vanessa was elegant, efficient, and everywhere. She began accompanying Marcus to meetings I used to attend, taking over the presentation of my research. When I questioned this, Marcus had a ready explanation. "Investors respond better when they hear the information from someone who isn't family," he said. "It seems more objective. Besides, I need you focusing on the big picture, not getting bogged down in meetings." Gradually, I found myself being edged out of the business decisions. My office at Horizon was relocated to a smaller room, while Vanessa took the space adjacent to Marcus. Client dinners that I used to host were now handled by the team, which increasingly didn't include me. At home, Marcus grew distant. Our conversations about market strategies were replaced by discussions about which social events we needed to attend, what I should wear, and how I should behave to support the Horizon brand. "The wife of a successful fund manager has a role to play," he explained one evening as we prepared for a charity gala. "You're the face of our personal brand. Clients invest with people they trust, and they trust people who project stability and success. I became that projection, the perfect corporate wife. I redecorated our penthouse to create an impressive, entertaining space. I hired a personal stylist to ensure I always looked impeccable. I memorized details about our clients' families so I could ask appropriate questions during events. I smiled and laughed and made everyone feel special, and all the while, I watched as Marcus and Vanessa grew closer, heads bent together over spreadsheets, sharing private jokes and late-night strategy sessions. "You're imagining things," Marcus said when I finally confronted him about their relationship. "Vanessa is a valuable team member. Don't embarrass yourself with pointless jealousy." Perhaps I would have believed him if I hadn't already found other reasons to doubt his honesty. The accounting discrepancies I'd noticed earlier had multiplied. Certain documents were now password-protected, kept from me despite my role as co-founder. One night, unable to sleep, I used Marcus's laptop while he was in the shower. A message from Vanessa popped up. "The Cayman account is set up. Transfers can begin tomorrow." We didn't have any declared accounts in the Cayman Islands. When Marcus emerged from the bathroom, I was sitting calmly on our bed, his laptop closed beside me. "What account in the Cayman Islands?" I asked. His expression barely flickered. "A legitimate tax structure for one of our overseas clients. Nothing for you to worry about." "If it's legitimate, why haven't I seen any documentation? I'm still a partner in this firm, Marcus." He sat beside me, taking my hands in his. "You're more than a partner, Olivia. You're my wife, my rock. But the business has grown more complex, and I've been trying to shield you from the more technical aspects." "Technical aspects like setting up undeclared offshore accounts?" His grip on my hands tightened just slightly. "I think you're overtired. We have the Petersons' dinner tomorrow, and I need you at your best." He kissed my forehead. "Take a sleeping pill and get some rest. We'll talk about the business structure another time." But that conversation never happened. Instead, the next week, Marcus surprised me with a 2-week vacation to Bali. Just the two of us. No phones, no laptops. "We need to reconnect," he said. "I've been working too hard, neglecting what matters most." For 2 weeks, he was the Marcus I had fallen in love with. Attentive, passionate, full of plans for our future. He talked about starting a family, about eventually stepping back from the daily operations of Horizon to spend more time together. "You've been the perfect partner," he told me on our last night in Bali, as we sat watching the sunset. "I couldn't have built any of this without you." I wanted to believe him. I almost did. When we returned to New York, everything seemed to revert instantly. Marcus was constantly in meetings I wasn't invited to. Vanessa was once again a permanent fixture at his side. And now there was a new development. Marcus began suggesting I take on more philanthropic work. "It would be good for our image," he explained. "Start a foundation. Support the arts. Find something that gives you purpose." The implication was clear. Find something to occupy yourself because Horizon is no longer your concern. Still, I hesitated to act on my suspicions. I had invested 8 years in this marriage, in this company we had built together. Was I really ready to admit it had all been a lie? Then came the incident with the Nakamura account. Kenji Nakamura was one of our first investors, a Japanese businessman who had trusted us with a significant portion of his family's wealth based largely on my analysis of Asian markets. He had always insisted on dealing directly with me, appreciating my detailed knowledge and straightforward approach. When he requested a meeting during his visit to New York, I naturally assumed I would attend. But Marcus had other ideas. "Vanessa and I will handle it," he said, adjusting his tie in our bedroom mirror. "You have that luncheon with the hospital board today, remember? I can cancel." Kenji specifically trusts my analysis. He'll expect to see me. Marcus's expression hardened. "The luncheon is important for the foundation we're launching." "These connections matter, Olivia." "Not as much as a major client who's been with us from the beginning. I need you to be a team player here," Marcus said, his voice taking on the condescending tone that had become increasingly common. "Vanessa has been working closely on the Nakamura portfolio. She's fully prepared." "Since when?" "That was always my—" "Things change as companies grow," he interrupted. "Roles evolve. You need to evolve too." After he left, I made a decision. I canceled my luncheon and went to the restaurant where Marcus was meeting Kenji. I timed my arrival for 15 minutes after their reservation, ensuring they would be settled into conversation. I spotted them immediately, Marcus, Vanessa, and Kenji at a corner table. As I approached, I caught fragments of their conversation. "The Special Opportunity Fund has consistently outperformed market indices," Vanessa was saying. "Your initial investment has already grown by 27%. Kenji looked impressed but puzzled. "This is separate from my main portfolio?" "A select vehicle for our premium clients," Marcus explained smoothly. "Limited participation for maximum returns." I reached their table just as Kenji asked, "And Olivia's analysis supports this strategy?" There was a moment of perfect stillness as Marcus and Vanessa registered my presence. Then Marcus recovered, his smile barely faltering. "Olivia, what a wonderful surprise. I thought you had your luncheon today." "It was canceled," I lied, matching his smooth tone. "So I thought I'd join you." I turned to Kenji, bowing slightly in greeting. "Nakamura-san, it's wonderful to see you again." Kenji stood, genuine pleasure in his expression. "Olivia-san, perfect timing. We were just discussing a new investment opportunity." "Yes, the Special Opportunity Fund," I said, taking the empty seat beside him. "I'm very interested to hear more about it myself." The look that passed between Marcus and Vanessa would have been comical if it hadn't confirmed my worst fears. "Perhaps we should reschedule," Vanessa suggested. "Give us time to prepare a full presentation." "Nonsense," Kenji said. "Olivia is here now. Let's continue." What followed was an hour of watching my husband and his assistant dance around my direct questions, providing vague explanations about an investment vehicle I had never heard of, despite supposedly being a partner in the firm. After Kenji left, promising to think over the opportunity, Marcus turned on me. "What the hell was that?" he demanded once we were alone in his office. "You undermined me in front of a major client." "No, I exposed the fact that you're running investment schemes I know nothing about, using my name and reputation to validate them, apparently." I was shaking, but my voice remained steady. "What is this Special Opportunity Fund, Marcus? Why haven't I seen any documentation? It's a new initiative. We haven't finalized the structure yet. So why are you already soliciting investments from Kenji?" We were floating the concept, gauging interest. He ran a hand through his hair, his expression shifting to concern. "Olivia, are you okay? You haven't been yourself lately. Maybe you should talk to someone." The sudden pivot to suggesting I was unstable was so transparent it almost made me laugh. Almost. "I want full access to all Horizon accounts and documents by tomorrow morning," I said instead. "All of them, Marcus. Or I go directly to our compliance officer with what I heard today." His face hardened. "You're overreacting. Go home, get some rest. We'll talk tomorrow when you're thinking more clearly." But when I arrived at the office the next day, my security badge didn't work. The receptionist informed me that there was a system upgrade and offered to escort me to my office. Except it wasn't my office anymore. My nameplates had been removed, my personal items packed into boxes. Marcus was waiting for me, looking grave but determined. "I think we need to reevaluate your role at Horizon." "My role?" "I co-founded this company. On paper, you're listed as a minority partner with non-operational status," he said, sliding a document across the desk. "This was the agreement we signed 3 years ago when we restructured." I remembered the restructuring, a necessary step for bringing in additional partners, Marcus had explained. I had trusted him to handle the legal details while I focused on our investment strategy. "You're pushing me out," I said, the reality finally, fully dawning. "I'm suggesting you focus on what you're good at," he countered. "The foundation work suits you. The client relations, the social aspects, you excel there. Leave the financial operations to those of us with the experience to handle them. Those of us, as if I hadn't been the analytical brain behind Horizon's early success. And if I refuse?" Marcus sighed, looking genuinely regretful. "Don't make this difficult, Olivia. We have a good life together. A stable marriage. Don't jeopardize that over a business disagreement." The threat was clear: my marriage or my rightful place in the company. I was being asked to choose. "I need time to think," I said finally. "Of course. Take the week off. We'll discuss this further at the Andersons' dinner on Saturday." As I left the building, carrying a box of my personal effects, I felt a strange sense of clarity. For 8 years, I had been playing a role, the brilliant analyst who became the perfect corporate wife. All along, I thought I was building a partnership. Instead, I had been crafting my own beautiful cage. It was time to break free. I didn't go home to our penthouse. Instead, I checked into a hotel under my maiden name and began to plan. If Marcus thought I would quietly accept being sidelined from my own company, he had fundamentally misunderstood who he was dealing with. My first call was to Julian Frost, a cybersecurity expert I had befriended at several tech investment conferences. Julian worked as a white-hat hacker, helping companies identify vulnerabilities in their systems. "I need to recover access to some protected information," I explained carefully when we met at a quiet cafe the next day. Julian studied me thoughtfully. "Corporate espionage isn't my thing, Olivia." "This isn't espionage. I'm trying to access financial records of a company I co-founded. Records I have a legal right to see, but am being deliberately kept from." After hearing the full story, Julian agreed to help, not by hacking directly, but by teaching me how to recover the information myself, leaving no digital footprints. "The most secure password in the world is useless if the user has predictable habits," he explained. "And from what you've told me about your husband, he definitely has patterns." Julian was right. Despite Marcus's financial acumen, his digital security was remarkably predictable. He used variations of the same passwords across multiple platforms, all based on significant dates and names easily guessable by someone who knew him intimately. Within 3 days, I had access to everything: emails, financial records, client communications. What I discovered exceeded my worst suspicions. The Special Opportunity Fund was just the tip of the iceberg. Marcus and Vanessa had been systematically diverting investor funds into a labyrinth of offshore accounts. They were reporting inflated returns to clients while skimming millions for themselves. The documentation revealed a sophisticated fraud that had been operating for at least 4 years, around the time Vanessa had joined the firm. But the most devastating discovery was personal. In an encrypted folder labeled Contingency Plans, I found a detailed strategy for removing me from Horizon completely. It included psychological assessments, a recommended approach for managing Olivia's emotional response, and even a script for how Marcus should frame my departure to key clients and investors. The date on this document was from 2 years ago. Even worse were the personal emails between Marcus and Vanessa, detailing not just their affair, which I had suspected, but their plans for after I was out of the picture. Once O is focused entirely on the foundation, We can accelerate the timeline, Marcus had written 3 months earlier. 2 years of her playing philanthropist, then an amicable divorce. She keeps the foundation, some property, and a settlement that looks generous on paper. We keep control of Horizon and all specialized vehicles. Vanessa's reply was equally calculating. Perfect. I've already started compiling material on her mental state. Subtle comments about her increasing anxiety, emotional instability. Nothing dramatic, just building a narrative that will support our position if she becomes difficult. They had been gaslighting me deliberately, systematically, making me question my own perceptions while they methodically worked to erase me from the company I had helped create. I forwarded everything to a secure email account Julian had helped me set up, then began organizing the evidence methodically. The fraud against investors was documented in meticulous detail. The personal betrayal was equally well established through their own words. I had what I needed. But what would I do with it? My first instinct was to go directly to the authorities, the SEC, the FBI, anyone who would listen. Marcus and Vanessa deserved to face the full legal consequences of their actions. But then I thought of the investors, people like Kenji Nakamura who had trusted us with their money. An immediate legal scandal would freeze all Horizon's assets, potentially causing massive losses even to the innocent clients. No, this required a more surgical approach, one that would expose the guilty while protecting those who had been deceived. I remembered something my father once told me. In finance, reputation is currency. Once lost, it can never truly be recovered. Marcus had built his entire identity around being a financial genius, a trusted steward of other people's wealth. His reputation was everything to him. That's when I knew exactly what form my revenge would take. I returned to our penthouse the day before the Andersons' dinner party, playing the role of the contrite wife. Marcus seemed relieved by my apparent capitulation. I've been thinking about what you said, I told him over breakfast. You're right. The foundation work is where I can make a real difference. His smile was both triumphant and condescending. I'm glad you see it that way. We'll announce your new focus at my promotion party next month. Frame it as you choosing to pursue your passion for philanthropy. You're being promoted, I asked, feigning ignorance, to managing partner. The board is finalizing it next week. He looked pleased with himself. We're hosting a celebration here for the major investors and partners. It will be the perfect opportunity to redefine your role publicly. I nodded, smiling. That sounds wonderful. I'll start planning right away. And I did plan, just not the party he was expecting. Over the next 3 weeks, I was the model of the supportive wife. I coordinated with caterers, sent invitations, selected the perfect wines, all while systematically preparing for the night that would change everything. I set up meetings with 3 key people: Gabriel Torres, our compliance officer who had always seemed uncomfortable with some of Marcus's more aggressive strategies; Diane Mendelsohn, our largest institutional investor who prided herself on her ethical standards; and Richard Park, a financial journalist who had tried unsuccessfully to get an interview with Marcus for years. To each, I provided just enough information to pique their interest, promising more at the party itself. I also arranged for Kenji Nakamura to fly in specially for the event, telling him I had important information about his investments. Meanwhile, I consulted discreetly with Patricia Walsh, one of the city's most ruthless divorce attorneys. I moved substantial personal assets into accounts Marcus couldn't access. I secured a separate apartment under a corporate name. I prepared for every contingency. The night of the party arrived. Our penthouse gleamed with expensive flowers, premium champagne, and the kind of understated luxury that signaled absolute confidence. I wore a red dress, a departure from my usual subtle palette. Red for courage, red for the blood this night would draw, metaphorically speaking. Marcus raised an eyebrow when he saw me. Bold choice. It's a celebration, I replied with a smile. I wanted to make an impression. As guests arrived, I played my part flawlessly, the proud wife, the gracious hostess. I made sure Gabriel, Diane, Richard, and Kenji were all strategically placed around the room. I watched as Marcus worked the crowd, Vanessa never far from his side, both of them oblivious to what was coming. When Marcus tapped his glass for attention, preparing to make his announcement, I positioned myself near the control panel for our entertainment system. "Thank you all for coming tonight," he began, his voice confident and commanding. "Horizon Capital has achieved remarkable success over these past 8 years, and I'm honored to be stepping into the role of managing partner." As he spoke, I watched the faces in the crowd, the admiration, the respect, all built on lies, all about to crumble when he mentioned my name, thanking his supportive and talented wife for her contributions. I felt a surge of cold fury. Olivia will be focusing her considerable talents on our new charitable foundation, where her compassion and intelligence will surely make a tremendous difference. He looked directly at me then, expecting the humble smile I had perfected over years of such events. Instead, I raised my champagne glass in a mock toast. "To new beginnings," I said, just loudly enough to carry across the suddenly quiet room, and to the truth finally coming to light. That's when I dropped the glass, letting it shatter dramatically on the marble floor. "Did you just call me pathetic?" I asked, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. Marcus stood frozen by the bar, his face pale beneath his perfect tan. Behind him, Vanessa reached for his arm, then thought better of it. "Olivia, you're making a scene," Marcus hissed. Glancing nervously at the crowd, I smiled. Not the practiced, perfect smile I'd worn for 8 years as his flawless corporate wife, but something wilder, more dangerous. "Oh, I haven't even started yet." I pulled the small remote from my clutch bag and pointed it at the massive screen. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for interrupting the festivities, but I believe you should all see this before investing another $1 with my husband." Marcus lunged forward. "Olivia, don't—" But I had already pressed the button. The screen flickered to life, showing the first of many damning documents I had discovered. "What you're seeing," I explained calmly, "is evidence of a sophisticated fraud being perpetrated by Marcus Reed and Vanessa Blackwood against Horizon Capital's investors." The room erupted in confused murmurs. Marcus tried to regain control. "My wife has been under tremendous stress lately," he announced loudly. "She's making wild accusations based on documents she doesn't understand. Please, everyone, enjoy the party while I handle this personal matter." I laughed, actually laughed. "Is that the script, Marcus? The one you prepared 2 years ago? About my emotional instability?" I turned to the gathered crowd. "Check your phones. I've just emailed each of you a comprehensive file detailing exactly how your investments have been manipulated." Diane Mendelsohn, never one to miss a beat, already had her phone out. Her sharp intake of breath confirmed she was seeing the evidence. "Marcus," she said, her voice cutting through the chaos, "is this accurate? Have you been operating an undeclared fund with returns that don't match what you've reported to us?" Before he could answer, I continued. "The Special Opportunity Fund isn't special at all. It's a shell game designed to siphon money from legitimate investments into private accounts in the Cayman Islands, Singapore, and Belize." Kenji Nakamura stepped forward, his expression thunderous. "Is this true? You used Olivia's name, her reputation with me, to solicit funds for a fraudulent venture?" "It's not fraudulent," Marcus insisted, desperation creeping into his voice. "It's an alternative investment structure with different reporting requirements. Completely legal." Gabriel Torres, our compliance officer, was scanning through his phone with growing alarm. "I never approved these transactions. This documentation was never submitted for compliance review." The room had transformed from a celebration to something resembling a shareholder revolt. Richard Park, the journalist, was furiously taking notes, occasionally shooting me appreciative glances for what was clearly the story of his career. Vanessa attempted to slip toward the exit, but I called out to her. "Leaving so soon, Vanessa? Before I share the emails between you and Marcus discussing how to systematically erase me from my own company? Or perhaps the ones detailing your romantic getaways using investor funds?" She froze, her composure finally cracking. Marcus abandoned his attempts to maintain control and strode toward me, rage replacing his earlier panic. "You've lost your mind," he hissed, grabbing my arm. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I pulled free of his grip, keeping my voice steady. "I've exposed the truth, something I should have done years ago when I first suspected you were lying to me, to our clients, to everyone. I built this company," he snarled. "Everything we have, everything you are, is because of me." And there it was, the core of Marcus Reed. The absolute conviction that he was the sole architect of success, that everyone else was merely a supporting player in his grand narrative. No, Marcus. Horizon Capital was built on my research, my analysis, my strategies. You were just the front man, the smiling salesman who took credit for my work. And when you decided I was no longer useful, you planned to discard me like outdated equipment. "You ungrateful—" "Careful," I interrupted. "Richard Park from the Financial Times is recording this entire exchange. I'd hate for your true character to be quoted accurately in tomorrow's headline." The mention of press coverage seemed to finally penetrate his rage. Marcus stepped back, his expression calculating once more. "This won't end well for you," he said quietly. "Whatever you think you've accomplished tonight, I'll fight it. I have resources you can't imagine." "Actually, I can imagine them quite precisely," I replied. "Approximately $37.4 million in misappropriated funds, currently sitting in accounts that the SEC will be very interested in freezing. As of tomorrow morning, when I file my official whistleblower report." His face went completely blank, the expression of a man seeing his carefully constructed world collapse entirely. Diane Mendelsohn approached us, her expression grim. "I've seen enough," she said. "My firm will be conducting a full forensic audit of all our investments with Horizon, effective immediately." Kenji Nakamura joined her. "As will I, and I expect full restitution of any misappropriated funds." One by one, the investors and partners in the room made similar declarations. Marcus stood in shocked silence as his professional reputation disintegrated before his eyes. Gabriel Torres was already on the phone with our outside counsel. Vanessa had finally managed to slip away, though I knew she wouldn't get far. The authorities would be very interested in her role in the fraud. As the party devolved into urgent conversations and accusations, Marcus made one last attempt to salvage something. "Olivia," he said, his voice suddenly soft, intimate, the tone he had always used when trying to manipulate me emotionally. "We can still fix this, together. We're partners, remember? Whatever mistakes were made, we can address them. Save the company, save us." I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw him clearly for perhaps the first time. Not the charismatic financial genius I had fallen in love with, not the callous manipulator who had betrayed me, but simply a man whose entire identity was built on the perception of success. There is no us to save, Marcus. There never really was. Just a convenient arrangement that benefited you until you decided I was expendable. That's not true. I loved you. In my way. Your way, I repeated. That's exactly the problem. Everything has always been on your terms, by your rules. Even now you're not sorry for what you did. Only that you got caught. He had no answer for that. Richard Park approached, his expression professionally neutral despite the excitement I could see in his eyes. "Mrs. Reed, would you be willing to provide an exclusive interview about these allegations?" Before I could answer, Marcus snapped, "She's not talking to the press. This is a private matter that's been grossly misrepresented." I smiled at the journalist. "I'd be happy to speak with you, Mr. Park. But I should clarify. It will be under my maiden name, Chen, Olivia Chen." The significance wasn't lost on Marcus. I was reclaiming not just my name, but my identity. As security personnel, hastily summoned by Gabriel to secure company documents and prevent any evidence from being destroyed, began clearing the apartment. I found myself standing alone by the window, looking out at the city lights. Diane Mendelsohn appeared beside me. "That took extraordinary courage," she said quietly. "Not courage," I corrected her. "Self-respect. Something I should never have compromised in the first place. What will you do now?" I considered the question. Throughout my meticulous planning for this night, I had focused entirely on the exposure, the confrontation. I hadn't given much thought to what would come after. Start over, I said finally. Build something honest this time, Diane nodded thoughtfully. When the dust settles from this, come see me. Talent like yours shouldn't go to waste. As she walked away, I felt a curious lightness. The perfect wife act had ended, but Olivia Chen was just beginning. 6 months later, the coffee shop across from the federal courthouse was crowded but quiet, filled with lawyers and journalists waiting for the proceedings to resume after lunch. I sat alone at a corner table, reviewing my notes for the afternoon testimony. The trial of Marcus Reed and Vanessa Blackwood had become one of the most closely watched financial fraud cases in recent years. The evidence I had gathered proved even more damning than I had initially realized. Dozens of investors had been affected, though thanks to the orderly investigation process, most of the funds had been recovered. I had spent the morning on the witness stand, methodically explaining the complex web of transactions that had obscured the fraud for years. The prosecution had been pleased with my testimony, clear, factual, and devastating to the defense's case. As I sipped my coffee, a shadow fell across my table. I looked up to see Kenji Nakamura standing there. "May I join you, Olivia-san?" he asked with a slight bow. "Please," I gestured to the empty chair across from me. He sat down carefully, studying me with thoughtful eyes. "You look well. Very different from when you were Marcus Reed's wife." It was true. I had abandoned the carefully controlled appearance of corporate wife perfection. My hair was shorter now, my clothing still elegant but more practical. But the real difference, I knew, was in my expression, my posture, the visible signs of reclaimed authenticity. "Thank you. How are your investments recovering?" "Quite well, thanks to your early warning." He smiled slightly. "And now I have the privilege of being one of the first clients of Chen Analytics. My new firm, a boutique investment advisory focused on ethical international investments, had launched just 2 months earlier. Kenji had been among the first to sign on, his trust in my abilities apparently unshaken by the Horizon scandal. "I'm grateful for your confidence," I told him sincerely. "It is well placed. Your analysis was always what I valued, not your husband's showmanship." He paused, considering his next words carefully. "Have you spoken with him since the arrest?" I shook my head. "No. His lawyers tried to arrange a meeting. I think they hoped I might be persuaded to soften my testimony. But there's nothing to discuss." The divorce had been finalized while Marcus was awaiting trial. With his assets frozen and his reputation destroyed, he had offered little resistance to my terms. I had been fair but firm, taking what was rightfully mine but not seeking punitive damages beyond that. My revenge wasn't about money, it was about truth. Kenji nodded approvingly. "Some bridges should remain burned." A commotion near the door drew our attention. Vanessa Blackwood had entered the coffee shop, accompanied by her defense attorney. She looked haggard, her former sleek confidence replaced by nervous exhaustion. Our eyes met briefly across the room. I expected to see hatred in her expression, but instead, there was something like resignation. She had accepted a plea deal in exchange for testifying against Marcus, a pragmatic decision that didn't surprise me. I felt no satisfaction at her downfall, just a weary acknowledgement of justice being served. She had made her choices, as had Marcus, as had I. Kenji followed my gaze. She will likely serve minimal time, probably. Her cooperation has been valuable to the prosecution. Does that bother you? I considered the question carefully. No. This was never about punishing them for personal revenge. It was about exposing the truth and protecting innocent investors. And it was about reclaiming myself, though I didn't say that part aloud. My phone buzzed with a text from Diane Mendelsohn. Chen Analytics approved for Mendel Fund's emerging markets portfolio. "Contract coming your way." "Impressive work," I smiled, feeling a quiet surge of professional pride. After leaving Horizon, I had accepted Diane's offer of office space and mentorship while I established my new firm. Her confidence in me had opened doors that might otherwise have remained closed in the aftermath of the scandal. Good news? Kenji asked. A new client. A significant one. He raised his coffee cup in a small toast. To honest success? I touched my cup to his. To honest success. As we finished our coffee, preparing to return to the courthouse for the afternoon session, I found myself reflecting on the journey of the past 8 years. The ambitious analyst who had fallen for a charismatic financier. The perfect corporate wife who had sublimated her own identity to support her husband's success. And now, the independent professional reclaiming her expertise and integrity. The perfect wife act had ended, but something more authentic had taken its place. My revenge hadn't been about destroying Marcus, though his destruction had been an inevitable consequence of his own actions. My revenge had been the reclamation of my truth, my power, myself, and that truly was priceless. When we stepped outside, a reporter approached me. Ms. Chen, can we get your reaction to the rumors that Marcus Reed will be taking the stand in his own defense tomorrow? I thought about the man I had once loved, now desperate enough to risk cross-examination. He would try to charm the jury, to spin his narrative of misunderstanding and good intentions. It was what he had always done, but this time, the facts would speak louder than his charisma. No comment, I said calmly. The evidence will speak for itself. As I walked up the courthouse steps, I caught my reflection in the glass doors, straight-backed, clear-eyed, resolute. The woman looking back at me wasn't defined by her relationship to a man or by her role in someone else's story. She was simply, powerfully, herself. And that was the most perfect revenge of all.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.